Welcome. Thank you for joining us on the midweek edition of Journalists Hangout. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo. Today on the program, Supreme Court affirms the election of Seyi Makinde as Governor of Oyo State. President Buhari pledges credible 2023 elections, promises to stop desperate politicians. And later on the show, IGP blames criminal activities on ABUJA-LOKOJA highway on bandits who shun amnesty, says operations to tackle crimes yielding results. I will be hanging out with Babajide Otitoju and Wale Adeoye. Journalist Hangout starts now. Oyo State Governor Seyi Makinde is probably the happiest politician in Nigeria today. The apex court in the land, the Supreme Court, has affirmed his election as governor of the state. This is after the Court of Appeal upturned his election in November. In a majority decision, the Supreme Court ruled that the appeal court decision to overrule the verdict of the Election Petition Tribunal in Oyo State, which dismissed the petition by the All Progressives Congress APC and its candidate Adeoye, was wrong. It said the majority judgment of the appeal court setting aside the ruling of the tribunal was not meritorious and deserved to be set aside. By this too, the controversy generated by the refusal of the appellate court to sack or retain Makinde as Oyo governor has been confined to history. Indeed, it has. Welcome, gentlemen, Babajide Otitoju and Wale Adeoye.
Yeah, good evening.
Now, Babajide, recall last month we discussed this exhaustively as much as we could, and I recall you talked about it the outcome of the Supreme Court being an either-or situation. Either it rules such that it takes us back to staggered elections, or it dismisses the case of the appeal court, the ruling of the appeal court in its entirety. Now, what do you think were the constraints of the Supreme Court in this judgment?
Well, the Supreme Court were not talking about constraints. The Supreme Court simply agreed with the judgment returned by the lower tribunal, which affirmed that Seyi Makinde, the governor, was validly elected. And the Supreme Court justices, in their wisdom, concluded that the majority judgment of the Court of Appeal overturning the earlier judgment handed down by the lower tribunal was not meritorious, and that it constituted a miscarriage of justice. So I've heard some of the supporters of Governor Seyi Makinde say that when even the evidence brought before the tribunal, that if they had to look at the votes, the number of ballots involved, it was just about 6,000. So you're looking at a state as big as Oyo State. You're looking at the quantum of votes that Seyi Makinde got. If the evidence that the APC candidate brought forward, if they were to look at it, the infractions that the lawyer talked about in court, they are saying that if they were to tally the votes affected, that was just about 6,000 votes. So there is no way that it could be right to set aside the victory that Seyi Makinde secured during the election on account of 6,000 votes. Our elections are not perfect. There's no election that we conduct that there won't be infractions here and there. But at the end of the day, what the judges want to know is whether those infractions significantly or substantially have impact on the outcome, or could have had a substantial impact on the outcome. So if that were the case, there will be a valid ground to say, no, people should go back to the field, have a fresh election. But if it will not have a substantial impact on the outcome of the election, then the decision they would take will be to let his victory stand.
Okay, so before I go to Wale now, should we now absolve the tribunal court of blame in that, would we say, lapse that the judge talked about, that they didn't evaluate evidence sufficiently before the case got to the appeal court?
No, you see, when you even talking about the evidence that they claimed
was not evaluated,
it also refers to evidence brought forward even by the PDP.
Okay.
So the argument then is, how can you build something on the non-evaluation, so-called non-evaluation of the evidence brought forward by the rival party? Because you went to court, not them.
Okay.
You know, so that had been the argument of Seyi's camp, that look, you cannot set aside the victory that this man secured on account of the fact that some evidence adduced by us were not evaluated. Okay. So I think that at the end of the day, justice has been done. This man won the election. He won the election easily. If you won 27 out of 33 local governments, by any way that one looks at it, you are validly elected. You are popularly elected. So I think that in the end, justice has been served.
Wale, do you have contrary views, or want to speak in the same breath?
I think the outcome of the judgment meets public expectation, at least to a very large extent. Even those who are observers, who belong to neither of the political party, because if you look at that election, the gap, PDP had about 515,000 to APC 357,000. That's almost about 150,000 difference for a government that had the APC in power to still manage to record that kind of feat. And in the House of Assembly, the PDP had 26 seats, compared with APC 5. Say I think one party, ADP, also won Bumosha. So if you look at that, those signals, it's a clear indication that PDP actually won that state. So I hope the governor will now, face governance, because for some months he has been distracted. He was not sure of what to be the outcome of that election. So I think he should also not it should not be overjoyous, because Ibadan is a very sensitive state. No governor except Ajimobi has spent 8 years. So people are watching him, what he's going to do in the next 4 years. If he performs well, he might be retained. But if not, then be prepared to pack his load and leave the stage.
So beyond the fact that justice has been served in the Supreme Court judgment, Babajide, what are the lessons, especially for the electoral process and for future cases that may go the way of the Oyo governorship election 2019?
I think that the NJC must take a dim view of the conduct of the judges of the appeal courts. Not in terms of the judgment that they delivered. I do not have any, I do not quarrel with the judgment that they delivered. I quarrel with the fact that they were not decisive. You cannot leave the Supreme Court to determine that matter. The matter was brought before you. So you must be definitive about the judgment. You can't say, if you are saying, oh, the Adelabu was unfairly treated at the lower tribunal, then you must take a decision to either say, okay, go for a fresh election. But they didn't take any decision. They refused to sack the governor, and they refused to, they said, oh, we are granting the prayers of the appellant. But they refused to take a decisive decision, which is customary, which you expect an appeal court to take, to either say, okay, or as a result of this, we are rendering that election a nullity, go back to the field and do a fresh election. They didn't do that. They didn't say, okay, yes, there were infractions here and there, but the governor should remain in office. No such proclamation was made. They just left it for the Supreme Court to decide. And Supreme Court does not evaluate evidence. It is what you do at the lower tribunals that they decide upon. So they made life difficult for the judges of the Supreme Court, because they should have taken that decision. It's just similar to what happened during Rotimi Amechi's case, when the appeal court refused to give a judgment. And I remember Justice Adeoye was very angry. Well, why would they behave like this? And the justices of the final court then decided at that time that they should go and give the judgment. That when you give the judgment, it will still come to us. In any case, it will still come to us. So why wouldn't you do your job? Why would you push your own job to us to do? Because this is what the appeal court did in this matter. They simply pushed the duty of determining whether the governor should remain in office or whether a fresh election should be conducted to the Supreme Court to decide. So we were all in two minds wondering what will happen. Would they organize a fresh election, which would then mean that we'll have another off-season election? But the Supreme Court, by simply looking at the conduct of the trial at the level of the lower tribunal, decided that it was fairly done and that justice was served at that level. And they took their decision to say, look, Seyi Makinde was validly elected. So kudos to them for doing what the appeal court refused to do.
So Wale, for you, in perhaps setting an agenda now for the NJC, what would you prescribe that they look at in dispensing justice at the appeal court level?
Well, before now, the Court of Terminal Jurisdiction used to be the Court of Appeal for governorship election. So if that had been the norm, there would have been a problem with this case in Oyo State. Because this judge, with the same type of judges, it would have been very difficult for them to, give judgment in line with justice. But I think for me, this case took almost about 10 months. And I think it's unnecessary. I think we had the electoral reform in 2010. I don't see why this case shouldn't have taken just about 2 months or 3 months maximum. But when you have a case where it goes on and on for about 10 months,
no, not up to 10 months. Because the elections were held in May.
In May. This is December. About 6
months.
Yeah. They took office in May.
Yeah. So we are talking of
almost 10 months. So that the election was decided. I get the point that you are making.
It's long. So I think there's the need for a review. Whereby you can, when you have this kind of case, the next 2 months after the election, then you can imagine the quantum of resources put into this exercise, by both parties. And at the end of the day, one party
and they wasted so much time that the 180-day ceiling was already upon them. So they knew that any judgment that they made, will require a fresh election. And to do a fresh election, you must give 90 days, which would have been outside the time within which they should have decided that matter.
On the election.
So they just decided to answer so that the Supreme Court can then take that decision on their behalf.
We hope that the reforms will augur well for the next election, not just in Oyo State, but across the 36 states of the Federation. In similar vein, election credibility has remained an elusive item in Nigeria's march to deepening democratic culture. Recent mangled elections, as witnessed in Kogi State, are bitter pointers. But the narrative may change in 2023 national elections. President Muhammadu Buhari has assured the country that he would guarantee an atmosphere for free and fair elections in 2023. President Buhari, who was interacting with journalists in Abuja at a brief event to mark his 77th birthday, warned that he will not allow those vying for the presidency in 2023 to use his name to force themselves on Nigerians. Meanwhile, the president's desire for free and fair elections in 2023 could be born out of several calls on him, on the journalist hangout, that he should etch his name in immortality by giving the country a credible electoral process. Let's share one of those moments with you.
Electronic voting, it has to come. The president must give his assent to the bill that is before him. He has to cover himself in glory. He has to give himself immortality. How will you be remembered? Will you be remembered for making our elections better? Will you be remembered for improving on our electoral process after you took over from Goodluck Jonathan?
Or taking us backwards?
He has to be conscious of how history will judge him. If he thinks only of today, he thinks only of now, and he does not think of the future, then it is bad. A leader shouldn't do that. I want a nation where I can proudly, when talking to my African friends, say, yes, we too, we can do great election. For now, I cannot do that.
Strong words there coming from Babajide Otitoju. And perhaps as a follow-up to this, the president is saying politicians who are vying for offices must work hard, and he won't condone the use of his name and office to canvass for support. Babajide, is it in the president's place to stop anyone to use his name to canvass for support?
You can't stop anybody from using his name. There's no way by which you can stop people from using his name. Even rival parties, sometimes you see them, you see their posters, they'll put Buhari's picture beside their own. Rival parties, so a lot of those small parties. So how we see, will he start breaking down billboards to stop people? How many people will he talk to? I mean, it's just, his own is to organize a free and fair election for us, make the process credible, support efforts geared towards making our electoral process really, really credible. Because for now, that's just not there. You can't vouch for the fidelity of our election. And it's such a massive shame because you read about elections in other places and you ask yourself, how come we are left behind? How come we are not taking giant strides in this area? And the beauty of democracy is for people to begin to be able to line up and say, we are choosing our leaders. When you vote, you are taking a political decision to either continue with the government in power or to elect a new government. So your vote is that political decision. But what do we have? Elections get rigged so cheaply in our country. We have even reached an abominable level that aircraft will be used to chase people away from polling centers. In our country. It happened, though the video is there.
Yeah.
In this country, we have moved away from simply firing at people. Aircraft, they are not Boko Haram that you are killing with a helicopter gunship. Oh. Human beings who just came out to vote. So this is the thing. The president must match his words with action. We want electronic voting. INEC has talked about it, that it wants the politicians to support it. The president must be the number one supporter of INEC in ensuring that electronic voting becomes a reality in our country. And it has to start with the amendment to the Electoral Act. He must give his assent. 4 times the president rejected assent to the amendment to the Electoral Act before the last election. It must not happen this time around. 4 times he rejected. So whatever be the problem, the good thing is that we have a National Assembly that nobody can say it is adversarial. At least Araki is no longer there. So when they present this bill to you, because that last bill, they had a public hearing, INEC was involved. The National Assembly was involved. So it was not simply what the National Assembly came up with. No. INEC made input. But we threw everything away. In our country, we must not have elections where they do not use the card reader. We must use the card reader at every election. But today, the card reader is not backed by law. So if you go to court, you take someone to court that they didn't use the card reader, INEC can make all the noise in the world. But at the end of the day, the Supreme Court had ruled that the card reader was not backed by law. So the president, is not for him. I heard the president say, oh, I'm going to stop desperate politicians. It's not in his place. It is the voters that have the power to determine who they want as their leaders. You are the president. You are the outgoing president. At that point, let the process be transparent. You don't have to get involved. You don't have to get involved. It is some of the things that we do in our country that I quarrel with. The power resides in the thumb of the voters. Let the voters determine who they want. It's not for you to determine whether someone is a desperate politician or not. That is for the viewer, it's for the voter to say, oh, this person, we don't want him, then we will not vote for him. You just make the process transparent. Nothing. I was reading about India, how they do elections. A country of 1.2 million people. If they do an election in India today, within 4 hours, the result is out. 4 hours. And you cannot tamper with the ballot because it's electronic. You can't tamper.
We just saw the UK elections recently concluded.
You can't tamper with it. And even the technology is 100% Indian. So we can go to them and say, okay, those who manufacture this electronic voting device for you people, can you give it to us? How does it work? They save money because all this paper that we buy, no more. So the electronic voting will ensure that we do not even waste money on papers anymore. And it will ensure that the process is transparent and also secret. It's also secret. You know what they were saying? They said, the Indians were saying, we have come to a stage in India when holding a free and fair election is no more news. What a beautiful piece of
expression.
Yes. It's no more news. So if you are talking about free and fair election in India, what are you saying?
Normal.
It's not new to anybody. It's something that they expect. It's like breathing in and breathing out. But in our country, that's not the case. The last 2 elections we had showed that we are not ready. We don't even want the election to be free and fair. The politicians are so devious that they don't want the elections to be free and fair because they want to just impose themselves on us. They know that they are not popular. They want to impose themselves on us. And if you talk now, you hear ta-ta-ta-ta. That's the thing.
Wale Babajide said repeatedly that the power lies in the people's vote.
Yes.
And as he said that, Kogi election just came back to my mind over and over again. Placed side by side with the president's promise, some would say the morning shows the day. Does it show in any way that the president can back up his words with action?
Well, in the first instance, for the president to have made that statement, shows that the intrigues about 2023 election
Have started.
Even though they have not even spent 1 year. And it also sends signals that politicians are interested more in elections than in governance. Electoral, issues occupy their minds more than, service delivery.
Present job.
Now, from what the president has said, I don't think there is anything wrong in being a desperate politician. If there is a desperate politician, it is the right of the people to stop that desperate politician, not the president to say that, look, I'm going to stop. What if the people want to vote for a desperate politician?
He contested 4 times now.
4 times.
Did anybody deem him desperate?
Did
anybody stop him?
For contesting election is an act of desperation. So if you want something, you want
to if it's not one.
Yes, if not one. So
1, 2,
I think
3,
4.
Nigerians should underline that statement that is most likely to be interpreted as the potential of interference of the presidency in the coming elections. And I don't know what the president means by saying that he's going to give us a credible election, because we just had an election in Kogi State, and in fact, daylight robbery, brigandage, you know, that is unimaginable.
Yes.
And somebody is sitting down there, a product of this violence, parading yourself as an elected, you know, leader of the people. It's really a shame. Look at the figures, look at everything. It was more or less like war. And I continue to wonder that this is not a good precedent for Africa. It's not a good precedent for our generation. So I think we have enough reason to conclude that the coming elections is going to take the same pattern. There's no paradigm shift that I've seen. So it just means that Nigerians should get themselves prepared to ensure that their votes are not stolen. But as I can't take the words of the president based on what I noticed in Kogi State this last time. People were killed. And in fact, with impunity, you can imagine that woman that was burnt, you know, in a bedroom. You can imagine the pain, and nobody cares. Life goes on. We are not even talking about paying condolence visits to them, you know. So I think I don't. What he has said is just a political statement, you know, and it's loaded. You know, he's telling us that the next election he has an interest, and that he wants to use his position to ensure he stops some people. But he should not do it for the sake of democracy. Let the people vote for the person that they really want to lead them.
Babajide, for you, what is most important is the president's legacy, what he's going to leave behind. But let's go back to the 8th Assembly, when the politics of the timetable of the election was one of those things, you know, that stops the president's ascent to the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. Let's, you know, review that process now for the 9th Assembly. In case the bill is, well, we hope that the bill will be represented. What are some of those things that should be reviewed in the amendment bill?
Well, I don't think that it was just simply the sequence of elections alone that made the president to not give his assent. Because if it was simply the sequence, well, it could have been adjusted. The president said there were mistakes. Go back and read this explanation that there were mistakes in the bill, you know, and for that reason he will not give his assent. So I don't think it was, yes, he complained. That one, it was the National Assembly, some of them wanted to simply do their election at different times. But you know, traditionally they do it with the president. If you do your election and you do your election first, chances are that you will not be bothered by the presidential election, and it could hurt the president's chances. So naturally he saw that what was coming was not good enough, and he decided to take action. But that is history. There has to be electronic voting. Electronic voting must be amongst the items that will put in the bill.
Hold the thought there. We have Henry from Edo State. Good evening, Henry.
Yeah, good evening.
You're on. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, yes. I want to talk about the president's comments concerning election. I don't think he means what he says. I think what his statement, if you ask me, I would say it's an empty statement at best. He doesn't mean half of what he said. I've followed whatever the president has been saying since 2015. Most things he doesn't mean it, because if he's a man of integrity, how come he supported? He has not said or done anything about Kogi State election that was marked with violence. So I don't think he means that statement. If he means it, he should sign that electoral reform bill.
We want a better country, and we will continue to advise the president and other people in leadership positions so that they don't lead us astray. One thing I know is that, yes, there have been complaints that, there are challenges about electronic voting because of issues of infrastructure. But are we going to be stagnant? Are we going to stay in one place forever? What are the moves that we are making? For example, as the president, I can tell Pantami, the Minister of Communications, to mandate all the telcos in our country to ensure 4G coverage in all parts of the country, so that even in the rural areas, people can vote. Because some of what they put in that bill would naturally have made our elections more transparent. For example, electronic transmission of results. In this age, you can't transmit results electronically. What is wrong? What is wrong about that? Because at the end of the day, if you have a copy, everyone has his copy. Nobody will go to one collation center and be changing figures as we do. Politicians go print using their agents in INEC who provide them with the security features. They go to print ballot materials
themselves.
Yes, when they print ballot materials, including the form EC8A. When they print it, they just wait. They allow you to go and sit in the stand in the sun and kill yourself over election. They are waiting to write. They simply write. They are not interested in any election. They are interested in that form EC8A and just to write. So this is the thing. But the electronic transmission of results will ensure that all polling agents, they have a copy. There's nothing like mutilating a copy as it happened. That was what happened in Kano, that they had to cancel election and organize rerun in Gamma Ward and other places because they said results were mutilated. When you have it on your phone, whether people have it, it can be regenerated. So there's nothing like, oh, it's mutilated because it's paper. No, you snap it and then you transmit it from that point. That was the plan, but we didn't do it. We're now saying, no, we cannot do that, or at this stage we cannot do that. When are we going to mature? When are we going to be able to conduct credible elections in our country? India, a country of 3.3 million square kilometers, they are able to do elections, and in 4 hours the result is out. A nation of 1.2 billion people, they are able to do election, and in 4 hours everyone knows who has won. Nobody can rig. In South Africa, they don't rig. It's impossible to rig. Even the ruling ANC, they lost elections in Nelson Mandela Bay and other areas. They accepted it. Here, we don't want to lose. If we see clearly that we are losing, we'll send us to go and chase people away. We'll beat people up. We kill people. And we say we are doing elections. We are not doing elections, so we are deceiving ourselves.
Time for another break. When we return, Wale, I also want you to look at the politics that may color the debate of the representation of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. But that will be after the break. You're watching Journalists Hangout. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Glad to have you back on Journalists Hangout. Today we're looking at a number of issues. We've looked judiciously at the Supreme Court ruling on the Oyo governorship election, affirming the victory of Seyi Makinde as winner of that election. And we've moved on to looking at election credibility set against the backdrop of the president's comment that he would not condone anyone who uses his name to canvass for support in 2023, promising credible elections in 2023. Now, Wale, the poser now comes to you. Yeah. What do you think are the politics that may color the debate of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, should it be represented? And I also want you to speak to the need for electronic transmission of results.
Well, in the first instance, if you don't have credible electoral process, you can't have good governance. It means the people that are representing us did not emerge out of our own free will. They are impostors. And when you have impostors, you can't talk about electricity, you can't talk about light, you can't talk about the essentials of life, because they are not representing you. So I agree totally with what Jide has said. Let us have a system that will ensure that the vote of everyone counts. If you look at the number of registered voters in Nigeria, compared with the number of people that come out to vote, you will discover there is a huge disparity, because there is exclusion. A lot of people, are excluded from the electoral process. But if you have a system where wherever you are, you can vote, it's going to be more inclusive. But I can say that Nigerian politicians, because they are not actually there for us. So a system that we create a paradigm shift that will no longer allow them to manipulate, they will not support it. So they want a system that will keep, that will keep the system the way it is. They don't want a transparent process that will lead to credible, political leaders. So I think it is a conscious thing that they are trying to sabotage,
electoral vote.
So it's conscious. They are doing it deliberately. So even for the fact that the president has refused to sign, he's not doing it on his own. He's representing a particular tendency within the political system. So it's not just the president himself. There are there are interests, there are political forces that will be telling that, look, though if you sign this thing, we'll not be able to have our way any longer. So we should let people know that if we want Nigeria to be great again, if we want Nigeria to be liberated from the shackles of repression and oppression, if we want Nigeria to join the great community of nations, it must start from electoral process. If we don't get it right, we can never get anything right. We'll just be having people that do not represent us, who are impostors, and they are not responsible to us. They don't owe us anything because they don't need our votes to emerge.
Yes.
So that is the problem. So I think unless we get it, and even beyond that, there are other issues, about that. Like for instance, pre-election matters. Somebody has been elected, we only discover that it's not even qualified. All those things has to be resolved. And we are looking at smaller countries like Uganda, Rwanda, even Ghana, that are making more progress in terms of electoral reforms. Yes. Far better. So what is the basis of Botswana calling Nigeria that we are, giants of Africa? So we need to address this problem if we really want, a better nation.
We have another caller on the line. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead. Very well, thank you. Go ahead with your contribution.
Yes, I can see that what Babajide was suggesting and my elder brother there is okay about electronic voting. But I want them to consider, if that is established, how will the senior advocate of Nigeria feed their family? Because with that, they won't be able to go to court anymore. So Babajide should consider that section. And when suggesting about electronic voting, that's all I want to contribute.
Thank you very much.
But they are just a small portion of our population. They will find their level at some point. We cannot hold our country down because of a few sons feeding lecherously from the deep pockets of politicians. So our country must grow. When we have free, fair, and transparent elections, there will be no litigation. Litigations, if there is at all, will be very minimal. If you look at 2015 election, the rate at which people went to court went down drastically because everyone could see that that election was largely, it reflected the will of our people. But go back now to 2019, you will see that the percentage of litigation has gone up again. It will go up if people are not convinced that they were well beaten. They will go to court. They will go to court. That's the thing. They will go to court.
Wale talked about forces that could prevent, President Buhari giving Nigeria this legacy of electronic transmission of results. Babajide, I'd like you to speak to that.
If the president wants it, it's about him. It's not about the cabal in Aso Rock that exists, but some people deceive us that there's no cabal. But we know a cabal exists. It's not about the cabal. It's not about the hangers-on in the corridors of power. No. It's about the president. It's about him. He's the standard bearer. He's the one we look up to. He's the one that the people voted for. A lot of those people around the president, they can't even win election in their household. But this is a president that we know has always been popular. Now he has to move swiftly to give himself immortality. What do I do that generations will not forget me? There are many ways that you can. Look, there's no way you are talking about the history of Nigeria now that you will not talk about Murtala Mohammed. No way. With the way he fought corruption, everything that he stole, he first gave away. He gave back to the government. So at that point, he's in a strong position to fight corruption. And he did. He gave back everything that he stole. If you go to Kano today, Galadima Road, his houses, the houses that built with stolen money, are on both sides of the road. He gave them back to government. I used to work there. Those houses, the same architecture. They belong to Murtala. But immediately he became he gave everything so that he will be in a strong moral position to be able to advance the war against corruption. And people will see him and respect him that this is our leader. That was what he wanted to do. Today, he spent only 6 months in office, but we can't forget him. It's impossible to forget him. And you see so many things, edifices in his honor. President Buhari has to make sure that our electoral process becomes better by the time he leaves office. Right now, we suffered retrogression. Only the people who hate the truth will not admit that. Given the conduct of some of the elections that we've had recently, even Jega came out to say it. He was forced to say it. Because if you started the process, you can't be excited to see sudden decline begin to happen. It's like you started a company, and the people who supplanted, the people who came after you, began to bring the company down. You can't be excited. When you sleep on your bed, you'll be rolling from one side to another. You won't be happy. Look at my sacrifice. Look at what they are doing to you. So they got complained that the elections these days are terrible. And the president must lead the way. When people see clearly that this is where the president stands on matters like this, the people around him, the selfish people around the president, they too, they will not want to do anything that will make the president unhappy. So since he has said this now, I'm happy that he said this. But as a journalist, I will not forget that he said it, and I will continue to challenge him to live up to what he said. Because if he lives up to his promise of giving us credible election, I'll be happier. I want a situation in which we can change our leaders at will, so that the irresponsible ones amongst them, they don't come back to power. The moment we get that right, honestly, we'll have a succession of good leaders. Yeah. Because the leaders will now know that the only way they can return to power is by serving the people. A lot of these ones don't care. Because as Wale said, they didn't get there by your votes. They know that you rejected them at the polls. But they imposed themselves on you. So they are not responsible to you. They will not take instructions from you. They don't feel indebted to you in any way. And it should not be like that. Leaders must feel indebted to the people. But leaders who come to power by rigging, by vote rigging, by beating up people, by firing at people at polling stations, they will not respect you. In fact, such leaders will be worse than armed robbers. They will not respect you. So this is the thing.
Because they didn't earn it.
Yes, they didn't earn it. They will even be saying, no, if we say, we voted for you, we say, when? I got myself into office in spite of you. I got myself into office. So
yes, Babajide. Indeed, electronic transmission of results will eliminate merchants of political thuggery, ballot snatching, and intimidation of voters. But the question is, will President Muhammadu Buhari leave behind the legacy of electronic transmission of results? Of course, time will tell. It's about 7 days to Christmas, and Christians in the country might just be in for a hitch-free celebration. Nigeria's Inspector General of Police, Mohammed Adamu, says operations to tackle criminals across the country are yielding results. While speaking with senior police officers in Abuja, the IG explained that some of the criminal activities along the ABUJA-LOKOJA highway and surrounding areas are carried out by bandits who refused the amnesty program in Zamfara State. According to him, more than 6,000 high-profile suspects have been arrested and 2,037 firearms recovered. Let's hear from the IG.
We are aware that because of the successes we recorded in the northwestern part of the country, especially Zamfara, a lot of bandits have given up arms, and some refuse to give up their arms, and they push further to Niger, Kogi, Nasarawa, and some part of FCT. And we are aware of that. And since 2 weeks ago, we decided to now move into their camp to disrupt their activities. So we move into the camp between Toto, FCT area up to Kogi, Robochi area. And many of them were arrested.
Yes, the Inspector General of Police there speaking on what seems to be the outcome of the peace process in Zamfara State, where amnesty was given the former bandits. But Babajide, just as government would have us believe that Boko Haram has been decimated? Should we believe that indeed the peace process where amnesty, provision of amnesty is made for former bandits, is it working in Zamfara State before we begin to look at the gains that the police is boasting of?
I think it's working because before now, they used to kill people for fun, especially in Zurumi, Shinkafi, and many parts of the state, many parts. But today, people are not being killed. You can imagine a town called Dansadao, they killed 120 people in one day. It was a market day. It was terrible. But today, the killings have stopped because Governor Wale came up with a peace initiative, not necessarily amnesty, a peace initiative, but they've not been disarmed. They were not disarmed. You know, you just reached out to them. They've not been disarmed. So a lot of them still go around with their weapons. And because they know that in the spirit of the peace initiative and the peace initiative that has also happened in Katsina State, they can't operate in those places. So they would rather move to other places. When you go to Niger State, the Shiroro area is almost totally taken over by bandits. And they are very ruthless. They are the people who kill innocent people on the Lokoja Abuja highway. If you check in the last 2-3 months, dozens of people have been slaughtered by bandits seeking to kidnap people on that Lokoja Abuja highway. You know, including the Kogi end of it, the Kotunkarfi area. They just shoot. If you don't stop, then they shoot. They'll kill the occupants of the bus. If you stop, they will then march the people into the bush and begin to get them to call their own people, their people for ransom and all that. It's terrible. When he talks about Lokoja, Abuja highway, how about Kaduna, Abuja? The governor of Kaduna said the other day that the place is now safe. 48 hours later, they shot a man dead on that same road. On that road now, rich people dare not drive on it with their flashy cars. Everyone is entering the train, even soldiers. Generals don't use that road. Their boys will go and wait for them, you know, at the train station. Everyone has fled that road. It's only rickety vehicles that you see dancing on the Abuja Kaduna highway. Nobody wants to die. So
Wale?
he has to secure other roads too, not just Abuja.
So, Wale, if they have not been disarmed, and some of them are still in Zamfara State, and they are even daring to push further down to Lokoja, that means that the police shouldn't sit comfortably. So should the police even be boasting of these gains when there is still danger?
Well, I think the IG has achieved, he has recorded some achievements, there's no doubt, but in the context of the prevailing challenges, those fundamental problems are still there, that our highways are not safe. Lokoja Abuja highway is one of the busiest in the country. It's the link between the south, through the middle belt to the north. Hundreds of thousands of people pass through that highway, and they have no option. It's the most convenient route to use. And constantly we have seen acts of banditry in these areas. But from the statement of the IG saying that they are bandits who refuse to take amnesty, means that he knows them. They can identify the people that are carrying out these activities. And I think that should make it easy. The unfortunate thing is that our intelligence gathering is not driven by data. We don't have records of this. If, like we are talking about electronic voting now, if you have data about these criminals, it will be very easy, just fingerprints, you'll be able to trace them. But this idea of going to highway to confront armed robbers, you can't even take samples of DNA to analyze them and know whether it's the same armed bandits operating in Lokoja that once operated in Borno or Zamfara or Katsina. It's not going to take us anywhere. So I think the police, number one, we need to have a security system that is driven by knowledge, driven by intelligence gathering. Then I also think the police need to decentralize. It is too, over-centralized. And that's why people are talking about community police. There's no
Policing.
way the IG can cover. Look at India, 28 states. Each state has its own police. And in fact, they are competing. In India, people talk about Kerala police as if it's the best. Nagaland police and Kerala, they are the best. Two states competing, you know. But here, we have a uniform, a mono structure. And I don't think there's no way we can have an effective policing with this kind of system. We should explore community policing so that communities who have good knowledge, geographical knowledge of the environment, will be the one that will be able to, you know, discover these bandits and then hand them over to the appropriate authorities. We all know that when anytime it's going to Christmas, there's always, you know, high crime rate. And then we have to check the influx of armed, you know, illicit weapons, especially from the Maghreb region. It's a major problem. From Libya, after that crisis in Mali, people are just moving down here with all sorts of so we need to man our borders, and not just to say that rice must not come in, but arms, you know, illicit weapons. We must make sure that we checkmate. You know,
all right. I would have loved us to
the
also
country.
look at, because the issue is multifaceted, look at, you know, alternatives to the lifestyle of the former bandits, not just, you know, the peace process. But time is up. We want to thank you very much for watching Journalists Hangout today. Don't forget to join us again tomorrow for another edition of the program. You can also watch Journalists Hangout on other platforms showing on your screen and on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. Don't forget, our feedback channel is Journalists Hangout at tvcnews.tv. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo. Bye for now, and God bless Nigeria. And thank you, gentlemen, for coming on the program.
Thanks for having us.
Yes. See you again tomorrow.